Okay, real quick, before we get into anything, I want you to think about the last time you went grocery shopping. You walked in with a plan. Maybe you even had a list. You told yourself, I'm just grabbing a few things. Shouldn't be more than $60. And then you walked out with 3 bags and a receipt that said $127. And you stood there in the parking lot, staring at that number like it personally offended you. Because honestly, it kinda did. You ran through it in your head. Okay, there was the chicken, and the pasta, and sure, those chips weren't on the list, but they were on sale, and the fancy coffee creamer, and that granola bar that looked healthy, and somehow, $127. Sound familiar? Yeah. That's not an accident. That is a system, a very well-designed, very well-funded, very deliberately engineered system. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how that system works, how much it's actually costing you. And I mean a real, specific, calculated, kind of infuriating dollar amount. And then I'm going to give you a practical roadmap to take that money back. Because here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. The grocery store is not just a store. It is one of the most psychologically sophisticated environments ever built. Every layout decision, every shelf placement, every lighting choice, every smell pumping through that ventilation system, all of it has been studied, tested, optimized, and retested. Not to help you eat well, not to make your life easier, but to get you to spend more money than you plan to spend, and to feel pretty good about it while you're doing it. And look, I'm not here to make you feel dumb, because none of us are dumb. I do this, you do this, everyone does this. But once you actually see the mechanics of it, once you understand what's happening under the hood, it changes everything. And that shift in awareness, that's worth thousands of dollars a year, literally. So let's get into it. Let me start with a number. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, the average American household spends about $5,700 per year on groceries. That's roughly $475 a month. Now, if you're single, maybe you're around $300 a month. Family of 4, you might be pushing $800 or $900. But for most adults, 1 or 2 people in a household, $400 to $500 a month is pretty standard. Here's the interesting part, though. When researchers ask people what they think they spend on groceries every month, the average answer comes in at around $200 to $250. People are spending almost double what they think they're spending every single month without realizing it. That gap between your estimated spending and your actual spending has a name in behavioral economics. It's called purchase amnesia, and the grocery store doesn't just benefit from it. The grocery store is built around it. Think about how the payment process works now. You tap your card. The transaction takes about 1.3 seconds. You barely look at the total. You're already thinking about what you're having for dinner. There's no real moment where you feel the money leaving your life. And this isn't accidental. Researchers at MIT and Carnegie Mellon did brain imaging studies and found that paying with cash actually activates the insula. That's the region of your brain associated with pain and discomfort. The same area that lights up when something physically hurts. Paying with a card barely registers. It's practically anesthetic. So every time a grocery store pushed you towards self-checkout, every time they made tap payments faster and more seamless, every time they introduced a store app that lets you just scan and go, They weren't doing you a favor. They were systematically dismantling the only psychological brake you had on your spending. Now here's where someone usually says, okay, but I can afford groceries. It's not like I'm going broke over food. And maybe that's true. But here's the real question I want you to sit with. What else could that money be doing? Because we're not just talking about $3,000 a year in wasted grocery spending. We're talking about what $3,000 a year becomes when it's working for you instead of going to the store. At a conservative 8% average annual market return, which is actually below the historical S&P 500 average, $3,000 invested every year for 20 years becomes approximately $148,000. $148,000 from groceries. Let that sit for a moment, because that's the real number we're talking about here, not just $3,000. $148,000 in potential wealth that quietly disappears, one shopping trip at a time, over the course of your adult life. And most people have absolutely no idea. So let's talk about how the system actually works, because once you understand the mechanics, you start seeing it everywhere. The first thing you need to know is something called the decompression zone. When you walk into a grocery store, the first 10 to 15 feet, sometimes called the transition zone, is designed to slow you down and overwhelm your senses. It's usually produce or flowers, bright colors, fresh smells, natural light. You know why? Because researchers found that when people feel a sense of abundance and freshness right at the entrance, they're more likely to feel that the entire store is high quality and worth paying premium prices for. That cheerful, colorful, fresh-smelling entrance is literally a psychological warm-up to make you more susceptible to what comes next. Now you move deeper into the store. And here's something most people genuinely don't know. The store is laid out specifically so that the things you actually need, milk, eggs, bread, butter, are almost always at the very back or scattered to opposite corners of the store. This is not a coincidence or a logistical necessity. It is a deliberate strategy. The technical term in retail is anchor product placement. The idea is simple. If you have to walk through the entire store to get your staples, you're going to see things along the way. And seeing things means buying things. Think about it like this. Imagine your office has a coffee machine, but instead of putting it by the break room, they moved it to the farthest corner of the building, past every colleague's desk, past the snack cabinet, past the birthday cake someone brought in. You'd grab something on the way every single time. Not because you're weak, because that's how human attention works. That's what the grocery store is doing to you. Every single trip. The average shopping trip results in buying between 20 and 50% more items than the person originally planned. Studies from the Journal of Consumer Research put the impulse purchase rate in grocery stores at around 60 to 70% of total purchases, meaning more than half of what ends up in your cart was never on your list and was never part of your budget. 60 to 70%. That means you walked in needing 10 things, and everything after item 4 or 5 was essentially unplanned spending. And it happened in an environment specifically engineered to make that unplanned spending feel normal, even smart. Now let's talk about the shelf, because this is where it gets really interesting. Eye-level shelving, what you naturally see when you're looking straight ahead as you walk down an aisle, is premium real estate in a grocery store. Brands pay significant placement fees to be at eye level. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases for major chains. Products at eye level sell 3 to 4 times more than the exact same product sitting on the bottom shelf. 3 to 4 times more. And the bottom shelf, That's where the store brands live, the generic versions, the items that are frequently identical in quality, sometimes literally manufactured in the same facility, but cost 20 to 40% less than the branded version at eye level. There was a fascinating study done on private label versus name brand grocery products, where researchers had participants do blind taste tests on dozens of product categories: canned tomatoes, pasta sauce, breakfast cereal, cleaning products, frozen vegetables. The result? In the overwhelming majority of categories, people couldn't tell the difference. In some categories, they actually preferred the generic product. But when they knew which brand they were eating, they rated the name brand higher. That's the power of branding. You're paying a premium, not for a better product. You're paying a premium for the feeling of quality, for the familiarity of the logo, for the emotional comfort of the brand you've seen advertised your whole life. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying brand loyalty is irrational. I'm saying it has a price, and most of us have never actually calculated that price. Here's the math. Let's say you have a household that shops weekly. You spend $500 a month on groceries. A conservative estimate is that about 30% of your cart at any given time contains brand name items, where a genuinely comparable generic alternative exists. So that's $150 worth of brand name products per month. If switching to generic alternatives saves you an average of 30% on those items, that's $45 saved per month, $540 per year, just from shifting your eye-level products to shelf-bottom alternatives, $540 a year. For the exact same nutrition, often literally the same product with a different label. Okay, now let's talk about something that I think is actually the most underrated driver of grocery overspending. And it's not what you think. It's not the snacks. It's not the checkout aisle candy. It's food waste. The USDA estimates that the average American household wastes between 30 and 40% of the food it purchases. Let me say that again. 1/3 of everything you buy at the grocery store ends up in the trash. According to ReFed, a nonprofit focused on food waste, the average household loses about $1,500 to $2,000 per year to food that was purchased, never eaten, and thrown away. That's a range that includes produce going bad in the fridge drawer you forgot about, leftovers that got pushed to the back of the shelf, bread that got stale, yogurt that expired, that bag of salad mix that turned into liquid within 4 days of purchase. $1,500 to $2,000. Gone. Every year. From food waste alone. And here's the psychological reason this happens that most people never think about. When you're in the store, you're optimistic. You see the fresh strawberries and you think, yes, I'm going to eat strawberries this week. I'm going to be a person who eats strawberries. You're imagining a version of yourself, the healthy, organized, meal prepping version who actually uses all of this. Behavioral economists call this the optimism bias in consumer behavior. We purchase for our idealized selves, not our actual selves. You're not buying groceries for who you are. You're buying groceries for who you imagine you'll be by next Thursday. And then Thursday comes, and you're tired, and there's something in the fridge that technically needs to be eaten, but there's also delivery that's 30 minutes away. And the strawberries sit, and then on Sunday, you throw them out, and you feel guilty for about 30 seconds, and then you do it again next week. This is not a discipline problem, this is a planning problem, and it has a very fixable solution that I'll get to in a minute. Let's keep going, because there are a few more mechanisms here that I want you to understand because each of them is costing you real money. The first is the unit price illusion. Grocery stores are required by law in most states to display the unit price on the shelf tag. That's the price per ounce, per pound, per liter. It's right there. But here's what the research shows. The majority of shoppers don't look at it. They look at the big number, the total price. And stores exploit this constantly. You'll see a buy two, get one free deal on something. And it sounds great. 50% extra free. But if you look at the unit price, you often find the product was priced higher than usual to compensate. The math works out to roughly the same cost per unit as the regular price, sometimes more. Or the classic bulk buy upsell. You're buying a box of crackers. The regular size is $3.49. The family size is $5.29. And you think bigger is better value, right? But the unit price tells a different story. Sometimes the family size is actually slightly more expensive per ounce. Not always, but frequently enough that the assumption bigger is always cheaper is genuinely dangerous to your wallet. And look, this is where I want to address something directly. You might be thinking, this stuff is just a few dollars here and there. Is it really adding up to $3,000 a year? That is a completely fair and reasonable question. So let me show you the math. Let's build this out with real conservative numbers. The average household wastes 30 to 40% of food purchased. On a $475 monthly grocery budget, that's roughly $142 to $190 per month in wasted food. Call it $165 on average. That's $1,980 per year. Round down to $1,900. Switching from brand name to generic on just 30% of your cart saves approximately $45 a month. That's $540 per year. Impulse purchases. The things not on your list that you grab because the store is engineered to make you grab them. Average out to about 20 to 30% of the typical cart. On a $475 budget, that's $95 to $142 per month. Let's say $100 of that is genuinely unnecessary. That's $1,200 per year, even being conservative and cutting that in half, say $600 per year. Add those three numbers together, $1,900 in food waste, $540 in brand premiums, $600 in impulse purchases. That is $3,040 per year. $3,000 annually on a completely average grocery budget, not extravagant, not reckless, average. And the most unsettling part of this, none of it felt like waste while it was happening. Every single one of those dollars felt justified in the moment. The food seemed fresh. The brand seemed worth it. The impulse item seemed like a good deal. That is the genius of how grocery stores operate. They make the waste feel like value. Now, let's get into some of the more subtle psychological tricks, because some of these are genuinely fascinating, and I think you'll start noticing them immediately the next time you walk into a store. The first is music tempo. This is documented research going back decades. Grocery stores play slower music to slow your pace. Studies by researcher Ronald Milliman showed that when slower music was played in supermarkets, shoppers moved more slowly, spent more time in the store, and spent about 38% more money compared to when fast music was played. 38%. From the background music. Slower music equals slower movement, equals more exposure to products, equals more purchases. The second is smell. Many large grocery stores pump the smell of fresh bread through their ventilation systems, especially near the bakery section. The smell of baking bread triggers a comfort response in most people. It's associated with warmth, home, safety. When you feel comfortable and nostalgic, you're less guarded. Your impulse control lowers. You buy things you didn't plan to buy. Some stores do the same thing with rotisserie chicken smell near the prepared food section around dinner time, because nothing sells a $12 rotisserie chicken faster than hitting you with that smell at 5:45 p.m. when you're already hungry and tired. The third is lighting. Produce sections and meat sections are lit with specific color temperature lighting designed to make products look as fresh and vibrant as possible. That bright, slightly warm light over the tomatoes, it makes them look redder. The cool light over the fish, it makes it look fresher. It doesn't change the product. It changes your perception of the product. And a product that looks fresh triggers a buying response that a slightly dull-looking product doesn't. And here's the one that I think most people have never thought about: grocery cart sizing. Over the past 30 years, the average grocery cart has roughly doubled in size. Why? Because a half-full cart feels like you haven't gotten enough yet. A nearly empty cart triggers a psychological discomfort, a feeling that you came all this way for almost nothing. When the cart is big, you fill it. When it's small, you stop sooner. Studies show that doubling cart size increases the amount purchased by up to 40%. The grocery store knows this. They upgraded to the bigger carts on purpose. All right, let me give you something even more uncomfortable to think about. Most people believe they are rational shoppers. Studies consistently show that people rate themselves as significantly more resistant to advertising and marketing tactics than the average person. It's called the third-person effect. The belief that these tricks work on other people, not on me. I know what they're doing. I'm too smart for that. And that belief, that sense of immunity, is actually what makes you more vulnerable, not less. Because the person who walks into the grocery store thinking I know all the tricks, but who hasn't made a list, who is shopping while hungry, who has no firm budget in mind, that person is going to get taken just as effectively as everyone else. Maybe more so, because their guard is down. They feel like they're in control when the environment has subtly claimed control of their behavior. This is what psychologists call the illusion of transparent self-knowledge. We think we understand our own decision-making much better than we actually do. We make a decision, pick up a product we didn't need, and our brain immediately constructs a post hoc rational justification. I got it because it was on sale. I got it because we were almost out. I got it because it's good quality. But the actual trigger might have been the placement, the smell, the packaging color, or the music slowing you down just long enough to notice it. We rationalize, we don't analyze, and grocery stores have spent billions of dollars across decades of consumer research to understand exactly how that rationalization process works. They know your brain better than you know your brain when it comes to spending decisions. So, what do you actually do about this? Because here's what I don't want this video to be. Another scary statistics but no solutions video that leaves you feeling helpless and vaguely anxious. That's not useful. What's useful is a practical system. So let me give you one, and I want to be real with you. These aren't revolutionary ideas. Some of them you've heard before. But I want to give you the reason they work, because when you understand the why, you actually stick with the behavior, the single most effective change you can make. And I mean, this is not even close. is to shop with a specific written list and commit to not buying anything that isn't on it. I know, you've heard that before, but here's the part you haven't heard. This works not because it requires discipline. It works because it shifts your decision-making from the store environment, where everything is engineered against you, to your kitchen, where nothing is. When you write your list at home, you're calm. You're not surrounded by artificial scents and slow music and colorful packaging. You're just you, thinking about what you actually need. And a decision made in that environment is fundamentally different from a decision made in the aisle next to a limited time offer sign. Research from the Journal of Retailing shows that shoppers with a complete list spend an average of 23% less than shoppers without one. On a $475 monthly grocery budget, that's $109 saved per month, $1,308 per year from a list. The second change, never shop hungry. This one sounds like a cliche, but the science is genuinely compelling. A 2015 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that people who shopped when hungry bought significantly more calorie-dense, high-margin foods, things like chips, pastries, prepared foods, compared to when they'd recently eaten. Hunger amplifies impulsivity. And in the grocery store, impulsivity is your enemy. Eat something before you go in, even just a small snack. It's one of the highest return 5-minute habits you can build. Third, do a weekly meal plan. I know this feels like a lot of work, but here's the math on why it's worth it. The average American household eats out or orders in about 4 to 5 times per week when they don't meal plan. When they do meal plan, that number drops to 1 to 2 times per week. The average restaurant or delivery meal costs $15 to $30 per person. A home-cooked meal averages $3 to $5 per person. For a 2-person household, that shift from 4 restaurant meals a week to 1 saves roughly $150 to $200 per month. And it dramatically reduces food waste because you're buying specifically what you're going to cook, not vaguely buying what you imagine you might cook. Meal planning pays you every week. It is a system that runs in your favor. Fourth, learn to read unit prices. Make it a habit to always look at the price per ounce or price per unit on the shelf tag before you decide between sizes, not the big number, the unit price. Give yourself 30 seconds per category for the first few months until it becomes automatic. This one habit alone, applied consistently, can save you $30 to $50 per month across your shopping trips. Fifth, and this one is counterintuitive, consider doing a monthly pantry challenge, 1 week per month before you do your regular shopping trip. Take inventory of what's in your pantry, fridge, and freezer, and try to make as many meals as possible from what you already have. Most households have $50 to $100 worth of food sitting in their kitchen at any given time that never gets used before the next shopping trip. A pantry challenge recycles that food into real meals, reduces waste, and skips or dramatically shrinks 1 shopping trip per month. Now let me talk about the long game, because this is where it really matters. Let's say you implement just 3 of those strategies consistently: a shopping list, never shopping hungry, and basic meal planning. Conservative estimates put your combined monthly savings at around $200 to $250. Let's call it $220 a month. $220 per month invested in an index fund with a historical average return of roughly 10% per year. And yes, I'm using the long-term historical average. Over 30 years becomes approximately $456,000, $456,000 from changing how you shop for groceries. Now, I want you to really understand what that number means. This is not hypothetical future money. This is money that is currently leaving your life and going to Kroger's shareholders, to Walmart's executive bonuses, to the research firms that help design grocery store layouts that extract more from your wallet. That money is real. It belongs to you. And you get to decide whether it keeps going to them or whether it starts working for you. That is the real conversation here. Not about deprivation, not about eating rice and beans and never enjoying food again. I'm not asking you to suffer. I'm asking you to be intentional. Intentionality applied consistently is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. That is not an exaggeration. That is math. Let me leave you with this. Most people treat their grocery spending as this kind of fixed, inevitable expense, like rent, like a utility bill, like something that just is what it is, and the best you can do is not think about it too hard. But the truth is that your grocery spending is one of the most flexible, most controllable, most improvable categories in your entire budget. It responds immediately to behavior changes. You can start today and see the difference on your next receipt. There's no waiting, no complicated setup, no minimum investment, just a list, a meal plan, and the decision to walk in with intention instead of walking in on autopilot. And here's what I want you to think about when you're standing in that parking lot next time with a receipt in your hand. Every dollar that stays in your account instead of going to the grocery store is a dollar that can be invested, a dollar that can compound, a dollar that your future self will be significantly wealthier because of. The grocery store has been playing a long game with your money. It's time you started playing one too. So here's your homework. This week, just this week, before your next grocery trip, spend 10 minutes writing out your list. Check what you already have. Plan 3 or 4 dinners. Eat a snack before you go in. And when you're in the store, stick to the list. That's it. That's the whole thing. Start there, and then come back and tell me in the comments how much your receipt was compared to what you expected, because I genuinely want to know. I want to hear from people who tried this and what happened. If this video gave you even one insight that changes how you approach grocery shopping, share it with one person in your life. Because there are a lot of people walking out of stores with $127 receipts when they went in thinking $60. And most of them don't know why. Now you do. I'll see you in the next one.